It is 13 centuries before the Common Era, and the sun is going down behind the desert cliffs of Thebes. This is Egypt at its height, the Egypt of the great Ramesses, lord of a kingdom already older to him than Rome is to us. On the east bank of the river, the greatest temple complex on earth glows amber in the last light. On the west bank, beneath cliffs the color of bread crust, the royal dead sleep in painted corridors cut deep into the rock, and between them runs the one thing older and greater than any of it, the Nile, wide, brown, patient, and tonight, in the first weeks of the flood season, quietly rising. This is a story about one night in that world. No curses, no battles, just Egypt after dark. The priests who tell the hours by watching stars rise. The village of craftsmen asleep on their rooftops. The dream books beside the beds. The water clock dripping in the temple court. And a river full of stars sliding past a sleeping kingdom. If stories like this help you drift off, a quiet click on subscribe helps me make more of them. And that's the last thing I'll ask of you tonight. Now climb the mud brick stairs to the rooftop where the beds are and watch the first stars come out over the river. Listen. From across the water, very faint, a rhythm of drums and voices, the last hymn of the evening service drifting from the great temple as the god is laid to rest for the night. Then it fades, and what is left is the sound this whole night floats on, the river. Not waves, the Nile does not crash, but a vast, soft, continuous slide of water past reed beds and moored boats, the sound of a continent's worth of rain traveling north in no hurry at all. The heat of the day is lifting off the earth like a blanket being folded back. The first cool breath comes down from the north, the wind Egypt calls simply the sweet breath. On 10,000 rooftops along the valley, families are carrying their sleeping mats up the stairs into it. By the time the morning star rises, you will know this valley the way its own people know it, by starlight, hour by hour, drip by drip. There is no hurry. The river has been keeping this schedule for longer than anyone can count. It will keep it tonight, before full dark. Look at the shape of this world, because no country on earth is drawn so simply or so beautifully. Egypt is a line and a ribbon, one river running the length of a desert, with a strip of green on either bank, here wide, here narrow, never far. Stand anywhere in the kingdom and you can see both edges of the universe, the black land, as Egyptians call their soil, dark, damp, alive, the gift of the river, and the red land, the desert, beginning where the last irrigated field ends, so abruptly that a child can stand with one foot in wheat and one in sand. Between black and red, there is no border post. There is simply the place where the water reaches and the place where it does not. Everything lives on the line. The villages stand on their mounds. The temples anchor the towns. The roads are the river itself, and the paths along the dikes. To go anywhere in Egypt is to go by water north with the current, south with the wind, which blows by the kindness of geography, almost always upstream. The Nile is highway, well, larder, calendar, and God, all in one, and tonight it is doing the most important thing it ever does. It is rising. This is Akhet, the inundation, the season that begins the Egyptian year. Far away, in mountains no Egyptian of this age has ever seen, summer rains have swollen the river's sources, and the flood arrives here as it arrives every year. Not as a wall of water, but as a slow, silent, week-by-week swelling, the river climbing its banks, spreading into the basins, drowning the exhausted fields under a sheet of brown water that will stand for weeks and then withdraw, leaving behind a fresh layer of black silt, the year's new soil, delivered free to every farm in the kingdom while the farmers sleep. No other nation on earth is fed this way by a river that repaints the farmland annually and waters it on schedule. Egypt knows exactly how strange and lucky this is. The flood's height is measured anxiously on stone stairways descending into the water. Too low means hunger next year, too high means drowned villages, and the readings travel by messenger to the offices of state because taxes themselves are set by the river's mood. This year the watchers already suspect, and the priests have hinted in the processions, the water is coming up beautifully. A good flood, a fat year coming. So understand what the rising water means to every sleeper in the valley tonight. It is not a threat in the dark. It is the pay arriving. Families fall asleep to the frogs singing louder each night as the marshes spread the frogs of the flood's own choir, and their swelling chorus means the water is doing its work, and fathers walk the dikes at dusk, watching the brown water inch up the measuring stones with the expression of men watching bread rise. The last light is gone from the cliffs now. The heat has folded itself away, and overhead, in a sky with no smoke and no lamps to dim it, the stars have come out the way they only ever come out over a desert in their tens of thousands, the great river of the Milky Way running overhead as if mirroring the Nile below. Those stars are not decoration tonight, they are the clock. Come across the river, quietly, to the temple roof and meet the men whose job is to read them. On the flat roof of the great temple, above courts and colonnades now sunk in darkness, two men sit facing each other across a north-south line, and between them they are doing something quietly magnificent. They are telling the time with the sky. They are the hour priests, the Wunnati, the hour men, the temple's astronomers, keepers of the night watches. Their instrument is almost nothing. A plumb line, a sighting slot of palm rib, a star chart gridded on papyrus, and centuries of records. Their method is the rising of the decans, a belt of 36 chosen stars and star groups that circle the year, each one rising above the eastern horizon roughly 40 minutes after the last. As each decan clears the horizon into the sighting line, another hour of the night is called. The stars rise on schedule. The priests know the schedule, and so the night is divided, 12 hours, from dusk to dawn, read straight off the turning sky. The night hours of Egypt breathe with the seasons, as they did in Edo and Byzantium, longer in winter, shorter in summer, because the sky itself stretches and squeezes them. No machine on earth in this age keeps better time than the great wheel overhead, and Egypt was reading it this way when the pyramids were young. The oldest star tables in existence are painted inside coffin lids, centuries older than tonight, so that even the dead could keep the hours. But the sky has a weakness. Clouds rare here, but real, and the moonless dark before dawn, when the horizon smudges. So beside the stairhead stands the priest's second instrument, and you can hear it before you see it. A drip, soft and endlessly regular, into a bronze basin. The water clock, a great stone vessel, wide at the lip, pierced at the base, its inner walls marked with hour scales, one for each month, because the clever makers knew the night hours change length with the season and cut the scales to match. Water in, water out, hour by measured hour, time you can hear. The temple's oldest water clock is a masterpiece of black stone from the reign of a king 3 dynasties gone, and it still keeps the god's hours faithfully. Drip, drip, drip. It is perhaps the most soothing sound of governance ever devised. Why does a temple need the time at night? Because the god's service does not stop at dusk. Through the dark hours, in the deep of the sanctuary, where we will not intrude, the night liturgies are kept at their appointed times. The guardian rites are spoken at the dangerous hours, and the whole grand machinery of offerings and hymns that begins before dawn must be wound and ready the moment the hour priest on the roof calls down that the last decan of the night has risen. The temple is a ship in this respect, and the hour priests are its watch officers. The vessel of the state sails through the dark on a schedule, and someone must be awake at the instruments. Sit a while with them. The older priest sights along his plumb line at the eastern cliffs and murmurs a name, a star's name, old even in his grandfather's time, and the younger one makes the notation on a fresh grid. 3rd hour of the night, the star of the thousand souls, risen. Below them, the temple exhales incense into the dark. Above them, the whole slow cataract of stars pours west. Between horizon and horizon, nothing is out of place. The third hour is called. Across the river, on a rooftop in a walled village under the cliffs, the people we have really come to visit are already asleep. Let us cross the water and climb up to meet them. Tucked in a fold of the desert on the west bank, a short walk from the green, stands a small walled village, one gate, one street, some 70 houses shoulder to shoulder, and it is, without exaggeration, the best-known ordinary place in the whole ancient world. Not because anything famous happened here, because its people wrote everything down on the one writing surface Egypt had in infinite supply. Broken bits of pottery and flakes of white limestone, laundry lists, love notes, lawsuits, sick day rosters, recipes, jokes, tally marks for borrowed donkeys scribbled, tossed, and preserved by the driest air on earth for 3,000 years. Most of antiquity comes down to us as kings shouting from monuments. This village comes down to us as neighbors talking. They are the servants in the place of truth, the craftsmen who cut and paint the royal tombs in the great desert valley beyond the cliffs. Quarrymen, draftsmen, sculptors, painters, plasterers, a state workforce of perhaps 60 or 70 men and their families, housed here by the crown, paid in grain, fish, water and firewood, with laundry service and their own doctors, the most documented employment package of the Bronze Age. They work 8-day weeks up at the tomb, sleeping in huts by the worksite, and come home over the cliff path for their 2-day weekends, and tonight is a weekend night. The whole village is home, fed and asleep. Walk up the one street in the starlight, the houses pressed together like books on a shelf, white plastered mud brick, each front door once painted red against demons, each lintel bearing the family's name. Through the doorways, a front room with the household shrine, a living room whose low brick divan is polished by generations of sitting, storerooms, a walled kitchen yard open to the stars, and the staircase, always the staircase, up to where everyone actually is. Because in an Egyptian summer, and early inundation is still summer warm, the roof is the bedroom. Up the stairs, whole families lie under the sky, reed mats and linen sheets. The wooden headrest that cradles the sleeper's neck and lets the night air pass beneath the head. Every visitor to Egypt finds them alarming, and every Egyptian finds them indispensable. A water jar sweating coolness by the stair, the baby in a basket between its parents, the grandmother nearest the parapet because she likes the river view at dawn and has seniority. From roof to roof, over the low party walls, the whole village at this hour is one connected dormitory under one enormous sky, a neighbor's cough 2 roofs away, someone's sleepy voice hushing a child, the dog changing his spot on the warm mud brick. Below in the street, the village's official night watchman, the doorkeeper of the gate, dozes on his bench with a spear against the wall, guarding a town whose only entrance he personally bolted at dusk. These are not grand lives. A workman here will never see the delta, may never see the far side of the eastern desert. But look at what the ostraca tell us he has. A trade at the top of its craft, a house of his own. Law he can appeal to. The village runs its own court, and its members sue each other with relish and write down every word. Feast days off, beer, a family sleeping within arm's reach, and the private, solid knowledge that the paintings his hands make in the dark of the royal tomb are the finest things of their kind on earth. The dog settles, the watchman's chin drops. Over the cliff shoulder, the 4th decan of the night comes up on schedule, and up at the top of the village, one lamp still burns, because every village, in every century we have visited, keeps one lamp lit late. Come and see whose it is. The lamp belongs, of course, to the scribe. Every crew has one. The young draftsman doubles as the village's man of letters, keeper of the work rosters, writer of the crew's reports to the vizier's office across the river, and after hours, secretary to anyone in the village who needs words put down. Tonight he sits in his kitchen yard with the lamp on a stool, a brush behind his ear, a water pot, his palette with its 2 worn hollows of black and red ink, and a lap full of limestone flakes, the village stationery working through the small pile of commissions a weekend always brings, a mother dictating to her son at the garrison downriver. "We are well. The water is rising nicely. Your sister's baby is walking. Do not trade your sandals again." A workman formally notifying a neighbor, third notice. In increasingly official language, the scribe supplies with a straight face that the borrowed donkey is overdue. A man copying out for the price of a jug of beer a charm against scorpions for his wife's sister. And the crew foreman's son, away on his first posting, has sent a letter home that the scribe reads aloud twice to the boy's mother by lamplight, the second time slowly, so she can hold each sentence a moment, and it says what such letters say, what they said from the frigate and from Edo and from the Byzantine barracks, and will say forever. "I am well. The food is not like yours. Tell father the work goes well. Kiss the little ones. Send sandals. 3,000 years from tonight, scholars in cold northern cities will hold these very flakes of stone in padded gloves and read this village's laundry lists with tears in their eyes, not because the words are grand, but because they are not. The bread tallies, the donkey suit, the sandals. This is the sound of ordinary human evening, the only voice from the deep past that speaks at kitchen table volume. The scribe, who suspects none of this, trims his wick, stacks the finished ostraca, blows out the lamp, and climbs to his own roof, the village's last light gone, the whole place of truth now dark and breathing under the stars. Far across the river, the water clock drips in the temple court. The 5th hour is called from the roof. All's well, though Egypt's watchmen say it differently. In the dark, in this village, the phrase stamped on 1,000 of its documents will do. All their affairs are in order, it says at the bottom of the daily work log, day after day, year after year. All their affairs are in order. Sleep on. Out beyond the village wall, where the desert begins in earnest, a different kind of night worker is on his rounds, and his footsteps make almost no sound at all on the sand. He is a Medjay, the name once meant a desert people famed as scouts, and has become the job title of Egypt's police. On the west bank of Thebes, the Medjay have one of the most particular beats on earth: the desert margins, the cliff paths, and above all, the approaches to the royal valley, the treasure-filled dead sleeping in the mountain, and every jackal track and goat path by which the living might creep toward them. They patrol in pairs, by moonlight when there is moon, and by starlight when there is not, with staves and long knowledge. They know which shadows are rocks and which rocks were not there yesterday. They check in with the tomb door guards at the fixed stations, seals intact, ropes undisturbed, the plaster stamps on the doorways unbroken, and they log it all. Because this is Egypt, and if it happened, a scribe wrote it down. Year 34, 3rd month of the inundation. All the seals of the great places examined, found sound. The night desert they walk is not empty. Jackals own it. Their yipping cries carry down from the cliffs, the sound every Egyptian child grows up with, eerie and ordinary at once. The animal is so much the spirit of these western margins that the guardian of the dead himself is pictured with its black head, and the workmen consider the real jackals a kind of colleague, fellow night watchman of the valley. Owls float past like ash. Scorpions do their small dark business between the stones, which is why no Medjay walks in sandals worn thin, and why the charm the scribe copied tonight has customers. From the high path, the patrolman can see the whole sleeping world at once. The village below, a tidy handful of dark rooftops. The green line of the floodplain, silvered where the rising water has already crept in. The river with the moon on it. The East Bank's temples, dark but never quite lightless. and behind him, over his shoulder, the pyramid-shaped peak that guards the Valley of the Dead, sacred to a cobra goddess who tolerates no noise. The mountain itself, the workmen say, is the tomb's final watchman, and it works for free. Two patrols meet at the cliff shoulder, exchange the night's nothing in low voices, seals sound, water rising, a hyena seen by the third station, gone north and part. It is the same conversation the Edo gatekeepers had, and the wall sentries of Constantinople, and the lookouts on the frigate's bow, the professional poetry of the uneventful. The valley behind them holds the wealth of empires in absolute darkness and absolute silence, guarded by seals of clay, men with staves, a mountain, and the jackals. And it is guarded by one more thing, the cheapest and strongest of all, the certainty shared by every soul in the valley that some doors should not be opened. Not every lock in history is made of metal. The sixth hour rises in the east. Half the night is spent. Down at the river's edge, something enormous just sighed in the shallows, and that is our cue to go and meet the Nile's own night shift. Come down to the water where the reed beds begin and stand very still. The Nile at night is a crowded silence. The moon lays a road on the water, the current wrinkles it, and along both margins, the flood's new shallows are alive from end to end. The frogs are a nation tonight. The spreading water has multiplied their parliament by 10, and their massed voices pulse up and down the bank in slow waves, near choirs answering far ones, the true anthem of the inundation. Fish smack in the dark after moths. Night herons, the same grey philosophers who fish the horn and the sumida, stand spaced along the mud like sentries who have unionized. A soft explosion of wings somewhere in the papyrus, a duck dreaming badly, and there that sigh again, and a glistening back breaking the moon road, the hippopotamus, the valley's largest and least negotiable inhabitant, grazing the margins by night in small herds, grey hills that walk. Egyptians treat hippos at night the way sailors treat weather, with respect, distance, and a large body of proverbs. The fishermen know where the herds feed and moor elsewhere. The farmers' dogs know not to bark at them mostly, and the sound of hippos tearing wet grass in the dark, a vast wet rhythmic munching, half a mile of it on a good flood night is, to a river family lying on its roof, simply the sound of the season working, the water high enough to bring the grazers up, the year proceeding as it should. Crocodiles keep their own colder counsel in the deep channels. The moored boats swing on their papyrus cables, and everyone, on water and off, observes the river's oldest etiquette. At night, the Nile belongs to the Nile. A few small lamps do move on the black water. Night fishermen, working the flood edge with hand nets where the fish crowd into the new shallows, a lamp in the bow, both light and lure. A late ferry sculling home from the east bank, carrying a physician back from a difficult berth, his fee a goose, indignant audible across the whole channel. And downstream, riding at anchor in midstream with a single masthead lamp, a state grain barge waiting for morning, its crew asleep on deck in a row, its watchman fishing off the stern rail with the sublime patience of a man being paid either way. The river slides on through it all, thick with mountain silt, carrying the year's wealth north at walking pace. Put your hand in it, warm as a bath at the edges, cool a handspan down, pushing gently and unmistakably against your palm the whole weight of Africa's rains, delivered as a caress. Every civilization we have visited by night had its heartbeat. Bells on the ship, wood on wood in Ido, the chant in the sleepless choir. Egypt's is simpler and older. It is this push. It has never once stopped. The seventh hour rises. On the east bank, deep in the temple, the night service will be turning toward the long liturgy of the sun's return, for in Egypt's oldest story, told gently, the sun at night is a traveler, and the whole sleeping world is his escort. That story is the deep hour's proper company. Let me tell it the way the night tells it. Every people we have kept night watch with had an answer to the oldest question a child asks at bedtime: where does the sun go? Egypt's answer is the grandest lullaby in the ancient world, and on rooftops up and down this valley, it has been told tonight, as every night, in 100 sleepy voices. The sun, the story goes, does not go out. He goes on stepping down from the sky at dusk onto a boat, because of course a boat. Everything in Egypt travels by boat and sails through the hours of the night along a hidden river under the world. Each of the 12 night hours is a region of that further country with its own gates and its own guardians. The crew of the night boat are the wise and the blessed, and the great work of the voyage, hour by hour, is simply to keep going through the dark, past every obstacle the dark can raise, until at the 12th hour the boat comes up rejoicing to the eastern horizon, and the sun steps out, washed and young, into the new day. Dawn in this telling is not a mechanism, it is an arrival, it is the traveller home. Grown Egyptians hold this story with great seriousness in its proper places, and we leave that to them and to their sanctuaries. But notice what the story does for the sleeper, because it is doing it right now on every roof around us. It makes the night a journey instead of an absence. The dark is not the sun's death, it is his working hours, and by extension the sleeper's own. You lie down, you travel far, you pass strange gates, and you arrive at morning renewed, the whole theology of it folded down at rooftop level into a grandmother's 4 words as the child's eyes close: he always comes back. That trust is the pillow under this entire civilization. A people fed by a flood that always returns, lit by a sun that always returns, planted in soil that is always renewed, keeps deeper than any doctrine the settled conviction that the universe is not out to get them, that the dark hours are staffed, that the machinery of renewal is running all night on schedule, crewed and watched like a well-run ship. The hour priests on the roof are tracking the voyage in the stars, the water clock is pacing it, the frogs are singing it forward. The whole valley sleeps inside the story, the way the family sleeps inside the mosquito net in Edo, enclosed, accompanied, expected at morning. He always comes back. The 8th hour rises on schedule, right where the chart says, sleep on. But Egypt being Egypt, the most paperwork-loving civilization of the Bronze Age, even the country inside sleep has been surveyed and the survey written up. In houses up and down this valley, tucked on shelves beside the beds, live the dream books. The finest one we know belongs, as it happens, to this very village, a papyrus kept by a scribal family just like our lamplight friends generations old, recopied and annotated a long business-like catalogue of dreams and their meanings, laid out in the driest administrative format Egypt owns. If a man sees himself in a dream looking out a window, good, his call shall be heard. If a man sees himself eating crocodile flesh, good, he shall become an official among his people. Drinking warm beer, by contrast, bad. Suffering follows. Column after column, hundreds of entries, each one stamped good or bad, in red like a customs ruling the unconscious, inventoried and filed. Do the people believe it, the way people always believe such books, thoroughly at midnight, loosely at noon? A dream that lands well is retold at the well side for a week. A dream that lands badly has remedies a charm to say on waking, bread and herbs to the household shrine, and the sensible universal prescription of telling the dream aloud to the morning light, which everyone's grandmother knows takes the power out of it. For the truly persistent bad dream, there are specialists. The same village doctors who set bones and mix salves, keep a sideline in the interpretive arts, and for everyone else there is the headrest itself, carved or inked with protective figures, the guardian of the sleeping head, standing its own small night watch an inch under the dreamer's ear. What should charm you, lying here 3,000 years downstream of them, is not the machinery but the attitude. Sleep to this valley is a real place where real things happen, a province of a person's life, worth furnishing, worth policing, worth writing field guides for. No civilization we have visited took the interior of the night more seriously. They packed for sleep the way travelers pack. The good headrest, the amulet, the water jar, the charm learned by heart, the book on the shelf in case of strange weather inland. And then the books all agree, the doctors agree, the grandmothers agree. Having packed properly, you stop worrying and go. The land of dreams is, on the whole, the dream book's own final verdict on itself, a good country. More good entries than bad in every surviving copy. The auditors of the unconscious ran the numbers, and the night came out solvent. The 9th hour rises. On the roof below us, the foreman's daughter smiles at something inside a dream window or warm beer we will never know, and the headrest holds her steady, and the frogs sing the water higher, and the audit continues quietly in 100 sleeping heads. The men sleeping on these rooftops spend their working weeks inside the mountain, and since the valley is quiet and the night is long, let one of them remember the work for you, the way he would tell a grandson, proudly, technically, and at a whisper. The royal tomb is cut hundreds of feet into living rock, corridor after corridor, stair, hall, and vaulted chamber, descending on a surveyed line so true that the plans drawn to scale on papyrus and ostraca, some of which survive, could shame a modern site office. The quarrymen go first, bronze chisels and dolerite pounders cutting by measure. The plasterers follow, dressing the walls smooth as linen. Then the draftsman, our lamplight scribe among them, snapping red guidelines, gridding the walls, drafting the long processions of figures and stars and sacred texts in confident red outline. The master corrects in black, the sculptors carve the outlines to low relief, and the painters come last with their minerals, ochres, malachite, the priceless blue filling the underworld with color no daylight will ever see. And here is the detail the old man loves best, the one that makes every listener sit up. All of it is done in the dark, and the dark is defeated by bookkeeping. Deep in the mountain, no torch smoke can be tolerated. The crews work by lamplight, linen wicks in fat, hundreds per shift, and the wicks are counted. Issued each morning by the foreman, logged by the scribe, collected and reconciled at night. So many wicks, so many hours, the tomb's progress measured in lampens the way a voyage is measured in sand glasses. The deepest chambers of the most secret monument on earth were painted on a system of controlled stationery. The old man taps the roof with one finger. That ledger, he says, is why the ceiling stars in the burial hall are straight. Light, in the place of truth, is never wasted and never guessed. He has painted those ceiling stars himself, five-pointed, golden on deep blue, whole heavens of them, hour charts among them, so that the king lies forever under a painted version of exactly the sky standing over this rooftop now. The work is secret in its particulars, sacred in its purpose, and yet the feeling the old man reaches for at the end is neither. It is craft. The mountain is dark, he says, and you carry the light in, and where you have passed, the wall is true, and the color sings. What better work could hands do? He falls asleep mid-sentence, as the best storytellers do, and the real stars wheel over him in their courses, unbothered by comparison. The 10th hour rises, and with it from some other roof, where two wives are murmuring a happier remembering, the festivals. Because this valley, so quiet tonight, knows how to light itself up like no place on earth. Greatest of all is the Opet in this very season, the god's own river progress from Karnak to Luxor, when the sacred bark comes out golden on the shoulders of priests, and the whole east bank becomes one roaring avenue of incense, acrobats, soldiers, sistrum players and beer tents. The river fills with escort boats, and at night the temple quays blaze with torches, whose reflections lie on the water like a second festival, drowned and dancing. Weeks of it. The village crosses over en masse in its best linen, and the children who fall asleep on their father's shoulders on the ferry home have had, all agree, the correct Opet experience. But the festival this side of the river holds closest is smaller and stranger and lovelier, the beautiful feast of the valley, when the direction of visiting reverses and the living cross west to dine with their dead. Every family that can packs food, flowers and lamps and goes up to the family tomb chapel in the cliffs. And there, in the painted little room above the ancestors, they hold the year's fondest dinner party, bread and beer and roast goose, garlands for the portrait statues, songs, the year's news told aloud to the grandparents in the wall, toasts drunk on their behalf. As dark comes down, the whole cliff face above the floodplain kindles, chapel by chapel, into constellations of lamplight, hundreds of small golden doorways glowing in the rock, each one a family sitting up late with its own, and the Valley of the Dead, for one night, is the best lit neighborhood in Egypt. No people has ever been on easier social terms with its ancestors. Death in this valley's practice is a change of address within the district. The dead remain family fed, gossiped to, invited annually to dinner, and the tomb is not a full stop, but a house with the family name on the lintel, which is why the wives agree as the remembering winds down. The West Bank at night frightens nobody local. The cliffs are not haunted, they are inhabited by relatives. The Medjay patrol what strangers might do. The residents themselves are no trouble at all. They are, on the contrary, the reason the living sleep so soundly beneath them. 4,000 years of grandmothers, keeping the oldest watch of all from their lit doorways in the rock. The lamps of that remembered night gutter out. The two voices go quiet. Roof by roof the valley is all sleepers again, and the real cliffs stand dark and companionable over the village, full of family under the 11th hour's rising stars. Follow your nose back down toward the floodplain villages, because in the last third of the night, Egypt's true religion announces itself on the breeze. Baking, bread and beer are not merely food here, they are the economy. Wages are paid in them, the tomb crew's salary is fixed in loaves and jugs, contracts are priced in them. The very hieroglyph shorthand for meal is bread and beer, and the polite wish for the dead on every offering slab is 1,000 of one and 1,000 of the other. Egypt is a granary with a state attached. The flood grows the emmer and barley, the state stores and ships and rations it, and every morning the whole apparatus is turned into breakfast by an army of bakers and brewers who start work in the dark like bakers everywhere in every age we have visited. Some conscript of the night, older than dynasties, decrees that wherever humans sleep, someone must be up to their elbows in dough by the 11th hour. The bakery attached to the temple estate across the river is already glowing. Conical bread molds by the hundred warming by the ovens, the smack of dough, the first batch in emmer loaves, dense and faintly sweet, in a dozen ritual and household shapes. And beside it, sharing the warmth and half the ingredients, the brewery for Egyptian beer is bread's twin, brewed from the same grain, thick, nourishing, mildly strong, drunk daily by everyone from field hands to the ladies of great houses, through reed straws when it is fresh and cloudy. It is breakfast, wages, medicine. Half the prescriptions of Egyptian doctors are administered in beer and diplomacy. No contract, funeral, festival, or reconciliation of neighbors happens without it. The brewers work at night for the same reason the bakers do. The kingdom wakes hungry and thirsty, and the kingdom's mornings are non-negotiable. Down the dark lanes of the riverside town, the smells braid together wood smoke, warm grain, The wet clay coolness of the water jars, the green tang of the flooded fields, into the specific perfume of Egypt before dawn, which a soldier posted to Syria will describe homesick on an ostracon a century from now and get exactly right in 4 words: bread, river, morning, home. On the rooftops, the sleepers turn toward it in their sleep. The water carriers are stirring. The 12th hour, the last of the night's 12, is rising in the east, and with it, low on the horizon, something brighter than any hour star, the one rising the whole valley has been waiting for all year. The hour priests on the temple roof have saved their finest observation for last. In the grey-blue east, just ahead of the coming sun, a brilliant point clears the horizon and stands trembling in the dawn air. The great star Sopdet, the herald making its first morning rising of the year, or near enough to set the roof to quiet celebration. This is the star whose reappearance after 70 days hidden in the sun's glare announces the inundation and anchors the whole Egyptian year, the original New Year's star, tracked by these rooftops for 2,000 years already. Its return with the rising water is the calendar, the flood promise, and the theology of renewal, all in a single point of light. And the older priest logs it with a steadiness his young colleague will remember all his life. The Great One is risen, the river is faithful, the year begins. And now the machinery of morning engages, tooth by tooth, exactly as the nightboat story promised. The east goes shell pink, the last decans dissolve, the frogs hand the shift to the birds ibis and hoopoe, and 100 pigeons rehearsing. The ferryman unmoor. The grain barge weighs anchor on the ebbing watch. In the temple, unseen, the morning service reaches its climax as the doors of the shrine are opened to the first light the traveler arrived, the voyage complete, the whole liturgical night resolved into daylight, and the smell of the morning's first offerings, bread again, beer again, drifts out over the awakening town. Up in the tomb builder's village, the watchman unbolts the one gate. The dog performs his morning patrol of smells. Wives are first down the stairs, waking the banked bread oven in the yard, yesterday's fire, alive in the ash, exactly as it was kept alive in Iddo and Byzantium and the frigate's galley, the same ember passed hand to hand across the whole sleeping world we have visited. The mats are rolled, the headrests stacked, the roofs give their sleepers back to the day. Tomorrow the crew walks back over the cliff path to the great work in the mountain, but that is tomorrow. This morning is the weekend's last, and it is spent correctly, slowly, on the roof, watching the flood glitter wider than it was last week, with warm bread and the whole valley below performing its immemorial morning water, smoke, birdsong, bargaining under a sun that, as promised, came back. One more late lamp burns tonight, down in the riverside town a doctor's, and it is worth a visit, because Egyptian medicine at this hour is the best in the world, and it knows things about sleep worth hearing. The physician of a temple estate is scribe, pharmacist, and priest of healing in one, trained on the medical papyri, great rolls of case-by-case instruction older than his great-grandfather, laid out with the same administrative calm as the dream book. Title of the case: examination, verdict, treatment. The verdicts come in 3 honest grades that any modern doctor would recognize the courage of. An ailment I will treat, an ailment I will contend with, an ailment not to be treated, knowing the limits being, then as now, half the art. Tonight's caseload has been gentle. A workman's crushed finger splinted with linen and honey on wounds. The papyri insist, and they are right about it, though they cannot say why. A colicky infant downstream dosed and rocked, and the difficult birth across the river that kept the ferryman out. Late mother and daughter both well, the goose surrendered with good grace. Now he sits with his last patient, an old boatman who cannot sleep, and has not slept well, he claims, since the rain before this one. For him, the doctor has the full Egyptian arsenal of the night, practical prescriptions from the rolls, warm beer with herbs at evening, chamomile country. This, poppy the doctor keeps respectfully for pain, lettuce which Egypt swears by for calm, and lotus steeped in wine. Sensible counsel that could be printed tomorrow. Eat early, walk at dusk, keep the same hour, put the quarrel down before you lie down. The papyri affirm that a heart carrying anger to bed will grind all night. And for the layer beneath, where medicine shades into comfort, a spoken charm for the small hours, learned by heart, addressed to the terrors of the dark by name, and dismissing them with bureaucratic finality. Begone, you have no business here. This sleeper is protected, which is, when you consider it, exactly what a lullaby is, and what the watchman's cry is, and what every civilization's night machinery has been saying all along in one dialect or another. The old boatman goes home with his herbs and his sentence to recite, already yawning half the cure. The doctor notes dryly on his ostracon, is being taken seriously at midnight by a man with a lamp. Then he banks his own fire, checks his own door, and takes his own advice. Behind the temple, ranked like a fleet of beached hulls, stand the granaries, great mud-brick domes, filled at harvest through doors in their crowns, drawn down all year through hatches at their feet. And they hold, in the most literal sense, the kingdom. Grain is money, wages, seed, and survival. These domes are the treasury, and the state guards them accordingly, with walls, seals, night watchmen, receipts in triplicate, and cats. The cats of an Egyptian granary complex are an institution beyond all others we have met on our nights abroad. The warehouse cats of the Golden Horn and the silk workshop cats of Iddo were salaried professionals. These are aristocracy. Egypt adores cats, households mourn them. Families shave their brows in grief when the house cat dies, and the granary cats know it. They conduct their nightly war against the mice of the state with the languid confidence of hereditary office holders, patrolling the dome tops in the moonlight, pausing to be admired, accepting tribute from the night watchmen who are officially guarding the grain and actually opening fish for the cats. It is the oldest arrangement in the country, and no one is fool enough to renegotiate it. Listen to a granary at night, the dry tick of settling grain inside the domes, millions of kernels finding their level, a sound like the softest imaginable rain falling indoors, the papery scurry and stop of the opposition, the padded silence of the administration on patrol. The watchman does his rounds between the domes with a lamp, checking the clay seals on the hatches unbroken, logged as sound as the tomb seals in the Western Valley, for Egypt seals its bread as carefully as its kings. Then he settles back on his stool. The senior cat installs herself against his ankle, and the two of them keep the treasury together through the smallest hours, in the manner of their predecessors for the last 15 dynasties. An empire, the Byzantine beacon keeper told us, is a fire relay. An Egyptian would put it closer to the ground. A kingdom is stored grain, watched well. By that measure, the kingdom tonight is perfectly safe under seal, under lamp, and under paw. 2 streets from the granaries, a courtyard holds the town's other treasury, the scribal school, where 24 boys and, quietly, the occasional daughter of a scribal family spend their days becoming the kingdom's memory. It sleeps now, mats stacked, but its day echoes with the loudest sound in Egyptian education, recitation. Reading here is learned aloud, the whole class chanting the classics line by line, and the neighborhood tells time in the morning by it, as surely as by the temple's trumpets. The curriculum is copying, endless, blessed copying. The teacher writes the model, the boys copy it on ostraca and boards, over and over, until hand and memory fuse. And because Egypt is Egypt, the models themselves are sly. The great set texts of the schoolroom are exhortations to be a scribe, a genre polished for centuries into comic perfection. Be a scribe, they chant, for the soldier marches over mountains with his bread on his back. The farmer's fingers are claws from the flood mud. The washerman launders at the riverbank, cheek by jowl with the crocodile. The potter is dirty as a pig, but the scribe sits in the shade, and it is he who keeps the accounts of all of them. 3,000 years of homework, and the teacher's joke still lands. The boys' practice flakes survive by the basketful from this very town, and they are the tenderest ruins in Egypt. Wobbly first attempts at the great sentences, teachers' corrections in red above, doodles of animals in the margins, complaints smuggled between the lines. One schoolboy's copy ends in the model's stately hand. It is to books thou must set thy mind, and beneath it, in the pupils, a small, heartfelt universal. I am hungry. They will grow into the men who count the wicks and log the seals and take down the village's letters at night, the quiet profession that runs this whole valley, and that has run, when you tally it, every single night we have visited. The clerk in the Byzantine chancery, the temple schoolboys of Edo chanting their own copies, the young officer writing home. Civilizations keep different gods and different hours. They all keep clerks, and the clerks, bless them, keep everything else. The moon lays a page of light across the school court. Somewhere on a rooftop above it, a 12-year-old who hates hieratic and loves the river dreams, in defiance of the curriculum, of being a ferryman. History does not record how it came out. History, it should be said, was written by the other boys. From a garden pavilion on the town's edge, some retired official's house, where a family party has outlasted the evening drifts the night's one thread of music, a harp and an old voice, unhurried, performing the kind of song Egypt keeps for exactly this hour. They are called, by the scholars who will find them painted in tombs, the harper's songs, and they are the most surprising things this solemn-looking civilization ever composed. Sung at banquets by blind or aging harpers, they are meditations set to strings. The generations pass, they observe. The great builders of old are gone, and even their monuments tire. None of us knows the hour. And then this is the Egyptian turn, the reason the songs were loved for 1,000 years. The conclusion is not despair, but its exact opposite. Therefore make holiday tonight. Put myrrh on your head and fine linen on your shoulder. Give bread to the one beside you. Follow your heart while you live. Make the day beautiful, and do not wear it out with worrying. The refrain of the most famous of them all says it in 4 words that need no improving. Make holiday, weary not. The old harper in the garden works through it the way such songs should be worked. Slowly, with long pauses that are part of the music, the harp murmuring under the words like the river under the valley. The family listens in the lamplight, 3 generations on cushions, the youngest asleep already across a grandmother's knees. And nobody applauds at the end, because you do not applaud the truth. You sit with it a moment, and then someone refills the cups. We have heard this night music before, in other keys. The Sunday psalm over the frigate's rail, the fiddler on the forecastle, the samisen dissolving across 2 miles of Edo dark, the unbroken river of the sleepless choir. Every civilization we have kept watch with sings something at the edge of sleep, and under all the theologies the message converges, and it is the harpers. The night is long, the world is old, you are here now, and here now is enough. That agreement across 4,000 years and every ocean is either the oldest coincidence in the world or the deepest fact in it, and a sleeping person need not decide which. The song ends. The harp's last note goes out over the water and is carried off north with everything else the river carries. The lamps in the garden go down one by one. The party joins the sleeping kingdom. One more trade deserves its night chapter because Egypt wears it. Linen. This valley clothes itself in flax, from the coarse working kilts of the tomb crew to the pleated, translucent, almost mist garments of the great, and behind every thread of it stands an industry that never quite sleeps. In the weaving sheds of the temple estates, the great looms stand strung in the dark, like the silk looms of the Mies and the warps of Edo, the same instrument, in every century, waiting for morning. Flax from the flood fields is retted, beaten, spun by the wives and daughters of the whole valley. Spindles turn on every rooftop and doorstep in Egypt, in every idle moment, so continuously that spinning is simply what hands do here, while the mouth talks and the thread flows to the looms as the water flows to the fields. The finest royal linen is woven so sheer, the papyri boast you can pull a whole bolt through a signet ring. The everyday stuff is honest white, endlessly washed and rewoven and patched and finally recycled. No scrap of cloth dies young in this economy into bandages, lamp wicks. The tomb crew's counted wicks began life as somebody's kilt. And at the very last, the wrappings of the dead, a lifetime's linen accompanying its owner across the river, which is Egyptian thrift and Egyptian tenderness in a single custom. And because all that white must stay white, the riverbank by day hosts the laundry fleet, the professional washerman, whose guild pride and whose hazards are both famous. Theirs is the trade the schoolbook teases for sharing its workplace with the crocodile, pounding, wringing, bleaching in the sun, and returning each household's linen by tally mark. Their stretch of bank sleeps now, stone slabs rinsed clean, the tally ostraca stacked under a weight. The crocodiles have it to themselves till morning and are welcome to it. On the rooftops around us, the whole system rests on its results. Sleepers on linen, under linen, heads on linen-padded rests, the day's washing folded in the chests below. A civilization is many grand things, but it is also, at 4 in the morning, simply this: everyone clean, everyone covered, and the looms strung for tomorrow. Beyond the last field, the desert tracks begin, and the watchman of the caravan station at the valley mouth would want you to know before dawn what the watchmen of every other night have told us. Tonight is only one card from the deck. His post watches the road that leaves the river for the western oases, strings of donkeys. The camel's hour has not yet come to Egypt, carrying wine, dates and minerals across the red land, navigating at night in the hot months by the same stars the priests read from the temple roof, resting out the furnace days at wells, the map of which is the caravan master's whole inheritance. Tonight the station holds one southbound string, dozing in the compound, and the watchman on the wall can hear his party trick. After 30 years, the difference between wind over sand and wind over gravel. And the year turns around him. In the season of Peret, when the flood withdraws and the fields emerge and the sowing begins, the nights go cool and busy. The valley's sleepers come down off the roofs and go indoors under wool, and the dawn smells of turned earth instead of standing water. In Shemu, the harvest and the low water, the nights are hot and short and the threshing floors work by moonlight, whole villages singing the oxen round. The river shrinks to a channel between banks of cracked mud, and everyone watches the south and waits. And then the herald star rises before the sun, the water lifts, the frogs return in choirs, and it is tonight again. Akhet, the inundation, the year's first season, when Egypt lies back on its rooftops and lets the river do the working. 3 seasons endlessly, a clock of water where other lands keep clocks of ice and blossom. The tomb paintings across the valley show all 3 in their registers, ploughing, harvest, flood, not as history but as promise. This is the wheel. May it always turn. It has turned now, some 10,000 times since the first villagers settled this bank, and it shows no sign of tiring. The watchman calls the last hour down to the caravan master, who is already awake. Desert men wake before stars set, on some instrument of their own, and the donkeys stand up in the dark, and the year and the road both lean toward morning. Behind the high wall of the retired official's house, the one whose harper we heard, lies the thing every Egyptian of means builds first and loves best, the garden. And an Egyptian garden at night is the valley's own moon-viewing pavilion, its daimyo lake. its cloister the local chapter of the worldwide guild of Made Stillness. The plan has not changed in 1,000 years, because it was right the first time. A rectangular pool at the center, stocked with fish and blue lotus, an arbor of vines, date palms and dome palms for the canopy, and around the pool in ordered rows the tomb painters love to draw, the beloved trees, pomegranate, fig, persea, and above all the sycamore fig, Egypt's great broad-shouldered shade tree, under which the whole institution of Egyptian leisure sits. The poems put goddesses in its branches and lovers in its shade. The practical papyri put a bench there. Both are correct. Tonight the pool holds the stars, as ornamental water holds them in every garden we have visited on these nights. The same trick, in Kyoto or Constantinople or here, and it has still never once failed. The lotus flowers have closed for the night. They will open with the sun, which is why Egypt cannot stop carving them on everything that concerns rebirth, the whole night voyage theology restated nightly by a flower. Fish rise and ring the starlight. A hoopoe, up too early, tries 2 notes and stands down. The gardener there is always a gardener, and in Egypt he is a man with a shadoof, a well sweep, and opinions about date varieties inherited from his grandfather, sleeps by the water-lifting gear, because the garden drinks at dawn before anyone else in the household. The official himself, silks and titles folded away, comes out in the smallest hour as old men do, unable to finish the night in one piece, and sits under his sycamore with a cup of water, listening to his fish and his frogs and the river beyond the wall. He has served 3 kings, survived 2 viziers, and buried, in the manner of long lives, more friends than he can now count on both hands. And the garden, he would tell you, the pool, the shade, the ordered rows he planted as a young man, is where all of it comes to rest. To plant a tree whose best shade your grandson will sit in. The valley has a dozen proverbs to this effect, and the old man is living all of them, at 4 in the morning, in his own small kingdom of leaves and starlit water. He goes in at last. The garden keeps the watch. Somewhere beyond the wall the 12th hour stars are assembling, and the great temple across the river stands up black against them and deserves, before dawn, one long remembering look. You have heard the great temple all night its evening hymn, its incense on the wind, its water clock, but only as a shape in the dark. Let the last watch remember it in daylight, because there is nothing else on earth like it. It is not a building, it is a stone city that has been growing for 600 years. Every king adds a pylon gateway here, a colonnaded court there, an obelisk, a sacred lake, until the whole covers ground like a town. Towering gates painted in colors that shout across the river, flag masts with pennants streaming, avenues of ram-headed sphinxes carved guardians, indistinct and patient, running from the quays to the doors. Inside, the courts narrow and darkened by design, hall after hall. The great forest of columns, papyrus stalks in stone, so vast a crowd can lose itself among them, rising to roofs painted with stars, the light dimming stage by stage toward the small dark shrine at the heart, where the god keeps his house, and only the purified come. The architecture is a lesson you walk, from the world's glare to the holy dark, brightness administered like everything else in Egypt, by degrees and by rank. By day, it is also this surprises visitors, a working town. The god's estates employ thousands, bakers and brewers and weavers and scribes and gardeners and singers. The granaries we walked among are its pantry. Whole fleets and herds answer to it. The god of Thebes is the greatest landowner in the world, and his house hums accordingly, a sacred economy with incense over it. On festival days it opens like a flower, the processions, the oracle borne on shoulders, the roar of the crowds and the town and the temple become one organism for a week at a time. But that is its day face. Its night face, the one standing over the river now, blacker than the sky behind it, one thread of lamp glow deep in its heart, Where the night service keeps the hours is, the priests would say, the truer one. The vast machine idling, holding the pattern, keeping the gods sleep as the village watchman keeps the workman's. The temple at night is the kingdom's banked fire, the same thing we saw in the palace of Constantinople and the castle of the Shogun, everything hot underneath, dark and ready, dreaming in stone. At dawn, the trumpets will sound from its roof, and the doors will open outward through all those graduated halls, brightness readmitted stage by stage, the daily miracle, performed on schedule, wick counted and clock timed. It has not missed a morning in 6 centuries. The old official under his sycamore sets his cup by that certainty as by a clock. When the temple fails to open, he tells his grandsons, "You may worry. Until then, sleep." The last remembering of the night belongs to the boatmen, because the moored fleets along both banks carry, folded in their timbers, the whole reach of Egypt's world. The rivercraft themselves are homegrown, papyrus skiffs for the marshes, acacia barges for grain and stone, some built to float obelisks of 600 tons downstream, the 8th wonder of engineering nobody talks about, and the elegant travelling boats of officials, cabin amidships, eyes painted on the bow so the vessel can see her way. But the great hulls, the seagoing ones and the flagship barges, are built of a wood no Egyptian field can grow, cedar, tall and fragrant, from the mountains behind the harbour of Byblos on the Lebanese coast, brought in ships across the Eastern Sea in a trade older than the pyramids. Every plank of it in the valley has a sea story. The boatmen sleeping on the grain barge tonight lie, quite literally, inside the smell of foreign mountains. And the harpers and schoolbooks keep alive the farther voyages, the expeditions south down the Red Sea to the incense land the texts call Punt, God's land, source of myrrh trees carried home alive in tubs, of ebony and ivory and strange animals, the journey commemorated in relief and legend until it has the flavor of half-dream. The tale every sailor along this bank knows by heart is exactly that. The shipwrecked sailor, Egypt's oldest sea yarn, the mariner cast alone on a phantom island, comforted by its serpent lord. "Fear not, little one, God has let you live to reach this isle of the spirit, laden with gifts, and returned home to tell it the ancestor, 40 centuries removed, of every castaway tale the sea will ever tell." It is a bedtime story tonight on at least one barge within earshot, told to a ship's boy by an uncle who swears, as narrators must, that he had it from a man who knew the sailor's grandson. Rivers empty into seas. Egypt's stories were always going to follow the water out, but they come home again too, like the sun, like the flood, like the letters, and that, the uncle tells the boy as the tale ends, is the actual moral, never mind the serpent. The water that leaves this valley returns to it. "Sleep now," says the uncle, in the oldest closing formula of his trade, "and if you dream of islands, remember the way back." And since the scribe's 3rd notice letter is still sitting on his stack, waiting for morning delivery, the night owes you the village's favourite entertainment, remembered from 100 evenings at the gate, the lawsuit. Specifically, for it is always, gloriously, this the donkey lawsuit. The village court of the place of truth is its own citizen sitting in judgment, the foreman, the senior workman, the scribe recording. It convenes on rest days at the gate, and its docket, preserved on ostraca by the basketful, is the small change of communal life, polished into high drama, wages of an absent day disputed, a pot lent and returned cracked, the price of a coffin painted for a neighbour, and donkeys beyond counting, donkey hired and overworked, donkey borrowed and lent onward without leave, donkey dead in suspicious circumstances of overloading. The great multi-year epic of the workman who pursued a neighbour through 11 hearings over the higher price of one animal is village legend. The ostraca of the case read, 3 millennia on, like the minutes of any homeowners association on Earth, and scholars who translate them can be heard laughing down institutional corridors. The genius of the court is that it works. Judgment is by neighbors who will share a wall with both parties for the next 30 years. Enforcement is by the same. Appeals lie for the stubborn to the oracle of the deified founder king born in procession, whose yes or no verdicts have the advantage of ending the matter with heaven's own finality. Fines are in grain, apologies are public, and the underlying rule the court actually enforces, beneath all the citations, is the only law a sealed village of 70 households truly needs. You will all still be here tomorrow. Behave accordingly. Tonight, plaintiff and defendant in the current donkey matter are asleep 4 doors apart, their case adjourned to the next rest day. Their wives, the ostraca, show this pattern, too long since reconciled, over the loan of a sieve. The donkey in question, cause of it all, sleeps standing in the yard between them, innocent as the moon, and history will remember its case number longer than the names of most of the kings whose tombs its owners painted. Justice, bread, water, stars. The village inventory is complete. The east is greying in earnest now. One workman is already up. You can hear him on the far rooftops. The earliest riser of the place of truth, a man famous on the ostraca for it, and the last chapter of the night belongs to the crossing he is walking down to make. At the landing below the village path, the first ferry of the day is loading in the half-dark, and its master, grey, barefoot, awake before the birds by lifelong habit, is the right companion for the night's last minutes, because ferrymen are the philosophers of this valley, and they know it. His craft is modest, a broad skiff, a steering oar, a sail he will not need for the crossing. His cargo this morning, the early workman, off to the east bank to see about a bride price, 2 temple singers due for the dawn service, a basket of the first figs, and the doctor's goose, changing owners at last. His fare, a copper weight's worth of whatever you have bread does nicely, or figs. The goose, he observes, remains open to discussion. His franchise is as old as the valley. There is always a ferryman. The teaching texts make carrying the stranded traveller across a mark of the just man, and the funerary texts, which the old master can quote with a wink, put a ferryman at the very border of the next world, quizzing souls at his landing before he will pole them over. Every crossing, he likes to say, is practice. Mid-river, at the exact seam of the night and the morning, he ships his oar a moment. He does this every day. The passengers who know him wait for it and lets the boat drift on the current while the light comes. The east bank ahead, temple pylons going gold at their tips, smoke rising from the bakeries, the first trumpet note trembling out over the water. The west bank astern, the cliffs pink, the village a handful of amber windows, the guardian peak catching fire at its point. The valley of the sleeping kings still deep in shadow, dark and safe. Seals sound, watchmen paid. Between the 2 banks, on the wide golden grey water, one small boat, holding the whole geography of Egyptian existence, east bank of the living, west bank of the dead, and the river of everything in between, in a single glance, for the price of a fig. Then he takes up the oar, because the singers are due, and the goose is restless, and the boat runs in toward the temple quay, through water turning minute by minute from lead to bronze to gold. The night is astern. It was, all parties agree, the ferryman, the workman, the goose a good one. Nothing happened. At length, beautifully back up on the village rooftops, in the deepest trough of the night, the smallest citizens of the place of truth are being tended by the oldest technology in this entire episode, the lullaby. A baby has woken on the foreman's roof, the night's one small emergency, and his mother, without fully waking herself, has gathered him in and begun the low, half-sung recitation that Egyptian mothers keep for exactly this, part song, part spell, entirely practical. The surviving texts of them are frank about their purpose, They are protective charms addressed over the child's head to whatever might trouble it, in the same firm doorkeeper's tone as the doctor's midnight formula. You who come in the dark, this house is not yours. The child is counted, the child is guarded. Go around. The melody does the soothing, the words do the bouncing. Between them, in the immemorial division of labor, the baby is asleep again before the third verse, as babies have gone down to watchman songs on every roof and deck and futon of these nights of ours. Around the small interruption, the sleeping children of the village lie in their kingdom. Their days are the ostraca's most charming margin, games drawn and named leapfrog, tug-of-war, the whirling game where you spin till you fall, jackal and hounds on boards scratched into rooftops, dolls of linen and clay with real horsehair, balls of stitched leather. The toy the excavators love best is a wooden crocodile with a jaw that snaps on a string, worn smooth by 3 generations of small hands. Their futures are already half written. In the villages weigh the boys into the crew after their fathers, the quick ones to the scribal court, the girls into the formidable guild of village wives who run the water, the ovens, the sieve loans, and, as the court dockets quietly reveal, most of everything else. But that is daylight's business. Tonight they are only sleepers, a rooftop census of small, warm breathing under linen, dreaming at the foot of the guarded mountain in the safest village of the safest valley of the Bronze Age world, while the mother's charm settles back into silence and the frogs take over the verse. The watchman at the gate below hears the lullaby end his own children grew up on it. His granddaughter sleeps under it now 3 roofs away and marks it in the ledger he keeps in his head as he marks the jackals and the water and the stars, all quiet, all counted, all going around. Give the man at the gate his own chapter, he has earned it. Dozing all night on his bench with one ear awake, the last of the long fraternity of gatekeepers these nights of ours have collected, the Kido gatekeepers of Ido, the key officers of the Golden Gate, the anchor watch of the frigate, and now this one, barefoot, leaning on a spear older than he is, keeper of one wooden door in a wall around 70 houses. His duties are written nowhere and total everything. He bolts the gate at dusk and unbolts it at dawn. He knows every step of every resident by sound and does not trouble to open his eyes for them. He passes the doctor, the midwife and the water carriers at any hour by the ancient exemption of their trades. He logs for the village scribe, formalizes it weekly, Egypt being Egypt, the comings and goings that matter, who left for the East Bank, who returned late from the harvest feast, which official's messenger arrived after dark and was made to wait, gloriously, until the foreman had finished his supper. The state guards the Valley of the Kings with Medjay and seals and a sacred mountain. The village it guards with this one unhurried man, and history should note that in 6 centuries of the crew's existence, the mountain's record and the doorkeepers are exactly equal, nothing lost on either watch. He has his philosophy, as all his brotherhood do, and it is gate-shaped. A village, he will tell you, has told every child of the place of truth. Sitting on his bench at dusk is not the houses, it is the wall and the one door. Inside the door, everyone is family, including the ones currently suing each other. Outside the door is the desert, which is nobody's family. His whole profession is keeping the difference crisp, and it consists, on 99 nights of 100, of sitting still in the dark between the two, belonging to both. Now, in the greying end of the night he stands, stretches until his shoulders crack, and performs the day's first official act, slides the bolt, swings the gate, and stands aside, opening 70 households to the morning in one motion, the valley's smallest and most faithful sunrise. The early workman passes him with a nod and a fig from his basket, the toll, paid daily, never demanded, never once omitted in 30 years. Some contracts are too old to write down. One last look up before your own sleep takes you, because the highest part of the Egyptian sky holds the tenderest idea this valley owns, and it is directly overhead. Most stars, the hour priests will tell you, rise and set. They travel, they vanish below the horizon, they return voyagers like the sun, like the flood, like the letters. But around the northern pole turns a company of stars that never set at all, circling the still point of the sky, always aloft, always burning, visible every clear night of a life from this rooftop or any other. The Egyptians watched them for a few thousand years and gave them the most beautiful technical term in ancient astronomy: the imperishable ones, the stars that do not know weariness, that do not know destruction. And to those stars in the oldest royal texts, the blessed dead ascend to join the imperishables, to circle forever at the calm center of the turning sky. Long before this village existed, kings had that hope carved into the darkness of the first pyramids. The ceiling stars the old painter spoke of, golden on blue over the royal sleeping hall in the mountain, are these stars. And something of the idea has long since settled down out of the royal theology into the valley's common comfort, that up at the north pole of the night there is a neighborhood of the unwearied, the ones done with rising and setting, and that the family gone across the river are, in the oldest and gentlest of the West Bank's many metaphors, up there in the permanent company, never below the horizon, never out of the house. Keeping, of course. This valley could conceive it no other way. A watch, find them now from your mat. The slow wheel of the northern stars, turning about their pivot like the great course of everything else tonight, the water clock, the year, the flood, the sun's boat, the ferry, but this wheel alone never dipping, never dimming, the sky's own sleepless choir. The Achaemenoi of Constantinople would recognize the idea instantly and bow to its seniority by 25 centuries. Under that highest watch, the whole nested system of the night stands complete, ring within ring, the imperishables over the valley, the herald star over the cliffs, the hour priests over the temple, the Medjay over the paths, the doorkeeper over the gate, the mother over the basket, the headrest under the dreaming head. Watch within watch within watch, down from the pole of heaven to the pillow, and you at the warm center of all of it, with nothing to do but close your eyes. There is one question this valley cannot answer, and on rooftops up and down the river, it is the traditional last wondering of the night, the Egyptian equivalent of a child's, where does the sun go? Except that no grandmother has ever quite settled it. Where does the water come from? No one in Egypt has seen the river's beginning. Traders' tales go south past the cataracts into lands of heat and gold and go vague. The learned speak of caverns in the deep south, where the flood wells up from the world beneath. The schoolboys are taught sensibly that the river rises because it always has. The honest answer, from the temple roof to the ferry landing, is the one the old boatman gives with a shrug and evident satisfaction. The water comes from farther than anyone has been. And every summer, from farther than anyone has been, it arrives on time, unbidden, sufficient like a letter with no sender's name that never fails to come. You on your mat are the one soul in this valley who knows the answer. Highland rains on mountains a continent away, a lake the size of a sea, the slow gathering of half Africa's summer into one patient northbound push, and notice that knowing it subtracts nothing. It is the same story the valley tells, with the marvel relocated, something vast and far and faithful, working all year in the dark beyond your sight, so that your particular field floods on schedule. The Egyptians wrapped that in mystery and gratitude. We wrap it in maps and gratitude. The gratitude, which is the load-bearing part, carries over unchanged. It is, when you hold it up against the rest of the night, the valley's whole philosophy in a single image, the water clock fed from a source you cannot see, the letters arriving from beyond the horizon, the sun voyaging home through country no living eye visits, the flood from farther than anyone has been. All the good things travel all night through the dark to reach this valley, the wandering concludes, and none of them has ever needed our worry to find the way, nor therefore the grandmothers land it the same way in every dialect do you, the frogs agree in massed chorus. Wonder answered, or at least adjourned, the rooftops settle a stratum deeper, and one more thing, sleeper, that this valley does not know, and you may carry down into sleep like a lamp. Of all the nights of the ancient world, this one, this ordinary, uneventful, donkey-disputing, bread-scented night, is the one that was kept. The empires around Egypt will leave their annals of kings and battles, thunder without weather, but this little village will fold its whole daily life into the dry ground, the laundry lists, the lawsuits, the schoolboy's "I am hungry," the sick days and civ loans and love notes and lullaby charms, and the desert, which destroys nothing it is given, will hold all of it under the same starlight you are lying in, until hands unimaginably far downstream lift it out flake by flake and read it, and weep a little, exactly as the scribe's customers did at first hearing. 3,000 years from tonight, the best-known ordinary people of the entire ancient world will be these, your neighbors on these rooftops, not because they were great, because they wrote things down and slept in a dry place, and their nights were worth keeping. So the night you have just walked is not reconstructed from silence, it is remembered from its own receipts. The wick counts are real counts, the donkey case a real docket, the dream book a real book from a real shelf in this real village, the doorkeeper's exemptions in the actual daybook. History, which mostly comes down to us shouting, comes down from this one valley at the volume we have kept all night, the kitchen table murmur, the gate bench yarn, the roof-to-roof goodnight. It is the closest the deep past ever comes to simply talking in its sleep, and you have been listening to it do so, hour by hour, all night long. Every civilization we visit on these nights leaves us one gift at parting. The frigate left the rocking, Edo left the watchman's cry, Constantinople left the unsleeping song. Egypt's gift is this, proof that an ordinary night, well kept, outlasts the pyramid's builders, that of everything a people piles up against time. The thing that actually survives is the texture of its evenings, yours included. Some nights are simply worth keeping. This is one. Here is another. Before the night closes its ledger, honesty requires one correction to everything you have heard. This village, which we have described as a crew of workmen, is actually run as the ostraca quietly document, and every workman would immediately concede by its wives. Consider the arithmetic of the place. The men are away at the tomb 8 days in 10, sleeping in the huts by the worksite. For those 8 days, the place of truth is a village of women, children, and grandparents, and everything that keeps it alive is women's administration. The water, delivered by the state carriers to the gate, but rationed, stored, and argued over by the wives' own unwritten rota. The grain wages, collected, milled, and this is the great domestic industry, brewed and baked. The household's real economy being the transformation of ration grain into bread, beer, and surplus to trade. The ovens, shared and scheduled by a diplomacy subtler than the vizier's office. The children pooled and supervised in the one street by whichever mothers are not at the ovens. The sick visited, the widows carried, the feuds managed with a stateswoman's long view for the wives. The dockets show, settle out of court far more than their husbands file in it. The law sees them clearly, and this is Egypt's quiet distinction among all the lands of its age. A woman here owns property in her own name, keeps it in marriage, wills it as she pleases, testifies, sues, and the village archives include them, wins. The trousseau lists and divorce settlements on the ostraca are as businesslike as the wick counts. Her bed, her mirror, her copper vessels, enumerated and hers. The elegant ladies of the East Bank estates hold their own, but it is here, in the workman's village, that the record catches ordinary women running an ordinary world with full legal hands, the fishmonger's daughter of Edo and the ropemaker's wife of Constantinople would emigrate on the spot. So amend the night's picture as the record demands. The doorkeeper guards the gate, but the network of who-owes-whom-a-civ that actually binds the 70 households runs through the wives, and it is older, finer meshed, and more reliable than anything the state maintains. The foreman commands the crew. His wife, the ostraca let slip, banks half the street's valuables in her storeroom because her seal is trusted further than the courts. The men paint eternity in the mountain. The women meanwhile keep the machine running that feeds the painters, and when the crew, in a famous year the scribes recorded with awe, downed tools over late rations in history's first documented strike, it was, every household knew, the wives' arithmetic of empty jars that called it, and the wives' verdict that ended it. They are asleep now with everyone else, the real government of the place of truth, under the same linen, -1 the foreman's wife, last awake as her counterparts have been on every roof and deck of these nights, running tomorrow once around in her head, the water rota, the oven order, the sieve still out at number 12, all accounted for. She files the day where finished days go, and the village is, at last and in fact, entirely asleep. Come back now to your own mat, on your own roof, before the light grows. Lie back on the linen, with the carved headrest cool under your neck, and let the valley finish the night around you. The last stars are letting go in the west. The great herald star stands bright over the cliffs, keeping its ancient appointment. Below, the river slides north, patient as ever, carrying the year's gift. You can hear it if you listen under everything else, that soft, continuous travel of water. The sound this whole civilization sleeps inside, the way you are sleeping inside it now. The frogs are slowing, choir by choir. The first warmth of bread is on the air. Somewhere across the water, the drip of the water clock has measured out the final hour, and the hour priests are rolling up their charts with the satisfaction of men whose sky behaved. The Medjay are walking home along the cliff path, and the jackals are handing the desert back to the larks. Nothing is required of you. That is the oldest luxury this valley knows, and tonight it is yours. The seals are sound. The water is rising on schedule. The dreams have been audited and found good. The sun is safely through the last gate, and the whole bright machinery of morning is being wound up by other hands, bakers' hands, priests' hands, ferryman's hands, none of them yours. Let the headrest hold you. Let the river carry the hours. 3,000 years of rooftop sleepers have lain exactly here, under exactly this turning sky, held by exactly this trust. The night is a voyage, the boat is crewed, and he always comes back. The star of the flood climbs a little higher. The valley breathes sleep now,